In this video, I continue analyzing where new players struggle in Tomb Raider 3. Let's go! Upon arriving in London, we begin at the top of the rooftops near the Cathedral. The players immediately notice two things. It is nighttime and it is raining. Quite possibly the worst combination imaginable. There's no indication of where to start, only deadly drops. Those who make their way down onto this platform are helped by the camera and spot the switch, but cannot figure out how to reach it, even though the answer is obvious. The passage leading to the first secret is hidden behind this roof. To realize it is there, you have to climb up here. There are several ways to pass, which is cool for gameplay. Some are wondering what Lara is doing on the rooftops exactly. She probably received information from Dr. Willard. Everything suggests that the crystal is the secret, but there is no music, so the players carry on via the crane. They die several times because the ladders are poorly signposted. The barbed wire is hidden by the darkness, and making it down without dying several times is highly unlikely. Once at the bottom, we encounter enormous rats, bigger than the ones in Venice but smaller than those in Greece. The Tomb Raider 2 music plays inside the secret room, which is something that has never happened before. Below you can glimpse a flooded room which hints at what comes later in the level, but nobody notices it. It is likely that the music was intended for that location, and that Lara activated its trigger by walking over it. We then have to return to our starting point without damaging Lara's new outfit. We also have to be careful not to mistake the scenery for ladders. Come on, Lara. Where's your grappling hook? Lara, do something! This jump is mandatory and extremely frustrating, because there is no way to tell where Lara is going to land. If you jump too far to the right, you will die again. Those who still have not spotted the switch head down. They may eventually notice this item, which is a secret, but the jump is slightly too far. It is not impossible once you know how to do it, but it remains a technique for experienced players. The level design suggests that we should descend, because once at the bottom, music plays and a guard appears. After picking up the items, players are forced to climb back up. This change in perspective reveals some ladders and a medipack. The medipack draws attention to the crack in the wall, which allows us to reach another rooftop. Sometimes the players stop to look at the scenery, which has been improved. Overall, they added more realistic lighting and shadows. An animated flag draws attention to a cavity covered in yellow paint. Today, this works as a visual aid for players, but at the time it was simply paint on a suspended work platform. Perfectly plausible within the setting. After being startled by a crow suddenly attacking Lara, we discover a locked button. The last unexplored area leads to a burning chimney. More experienced Tomb Raider players discover a hidden item here, but some miss the secret right next to it. Incidentally, Lara performs a different animation at the top of this ladder because the game considers it to be half a block high due to the slope. Some players then attempt this shortcut. It is possible but difficult, and this is where they either notice or remember the switch. Now that the hatch has been raised, we can use the zip line, provided we realize there are monkey bars above us. The second switch lowers the hatch, giving access to the platform below. For now, however, we need to remain on this level. This room is so dark that all the player can see are the silhouettes of rats. The floor gives way and it is game over. At the end of the corridor, there is a key. The more determined players notice that the inventory calls it the flu room key, except they have not seen the lock yet. There is a crystal below, so naturally everyone heads towards it, then climbs back up the ladder, forgetting about the medipack crushed by the platform we dropped earlier. We pick up a lot of flares in this level, and it's a good idea to use them. Many players attempt this jump, which is possible but rather tricky. In fact, there is a button hidden underneath this level which allows Lara to cross by hanging from the edge. Only one floor remains unexplored, the one opened up by the hatch. This is where we have to collect the seemingly impossible secret mentioned earlier, by hanging from the bricks, even though nothing indicates that this is possible. It was slightly more obvious in the original version, but it is still ridiculous. At this point, a crow spawns without being immediately visible. It is nevertheless best to take it out before going for the secret, otherwise this bug can occur. I forgot to save! Through the small opening, we reach the work platform with the paint, as well as a button that unlocks the one we saw earlier. I will not mention this every time, but in this level, the slightest mistake results in a fatal fall. We now have to climb all the way back to the top of the rooftops. With any luck, it will be our first attempt, for others, perhaps the 10th. There is a shortcut across the gap, provided you have enough health. The survivors find the button and activate it, but nothing happens because the developers apparently considered its function, self-explanatory. At this point, there are 4 categories of players. Those who assume the game has bugged out and search the internet for a solution. Those who scour the entire level to see whether a door has opened somewhere. Then there are those who press the button again and turn up the volume, hoping to hear a nearby door opening. It is a good idea, but it does not help here. Finally, there are the hardcore players who have been taking notes and start thinking about everything they have seen that could possibly have moved. The crane is still in place, but the suspended work platform has moved. The change is difficult to notice because of the perspective. The damn button really needed a sound cue. When heading onto the platform, remember to take out the guard above, otherwise he may despawn later. We reach the lock, followed by a button which redirects the fire from the chimney towards Lara's current position. Brilliant idea. On the way back out, another crow attacks us. Thankfully, Lara's boots have a decent grip, otherwise this would turn into a British comedy. To reach the chimney, we first have to go back down and then climb up again. The Tomb Raider 2 music kicks in, which seems to indicate that we are making progress. All that remains is to clear this small jump without hitting our head, which results in a game over, you know the drill. You might think this is the end of the level, but we are not even halfway through. Remember the cistern from the first game? The developers reused the concept. We now have 3 rooms filled with water that need to be drained and refilled. The first room contains nothing but a closed underwater hatch. The second has a lever which can only be reached by filling the room with water. The lever opens the hatch. Did I mention that the remaster has made these areas considerably darker? Because it has. Through the hatch, players discover enormous propellers. Those who played Tomb Raider 2 immediately understand the danger. Everyone else dies horribly while imagining just how terrifying this scene would be in real life. The only option is to change the water level, which slows the propellers down enough to get through, at least for those brave enough to approach them while they are still spinning. As Lara emerges from the water, she is greeted by a Terminator who is terminated rather quickly. When we enter the next room, the camera moves to show us an electrical box. Unfortunately, players who are running only have half a second to notice it. We discover a room with walls scorched by a mad machine roaming around like a badly programmed robot vacuum. Because it is so dark, the player is drawn towards the crystal, which illuminates the switch that turns the lights on. A moment of silence for all epileptics. The only movable object is a plastic block used to stop the machine. The goal is to make it collide with the electrical box. We therefore have to move the block while taking its route into account. One touch is enough for Lara to be crushed, sliced into pieces by the block, and electrocuted. Bloody hell, I did not have that death on my bingo card, and that list already included being killed by a magnetic cannon and suffocating in mud. Moving the block is not particularly difficult, but the closer we get to the center of the room, the faster the machine returns because we are altering its route. Since Lara's pushing animation cannot be cancelled, this creates an enormous amount of anxiety. It feels like being trapped in a dream where a monster is slowly trying to reach you. Hey, that's unfair. What? Once the machine destroys itself, the camera shows us the switch room for half a second, accompanied by the sound of a hatch opening. Several players retrace their steps instead of using the ladder that leads directly there. Activating the new button makes us assume it has opened access to the third room, which is located inside the second one. Players rush there, only to find that the water has disappeared. The camera tries to warn them about the danger, but they fall into the hole. We need to reverse the flow of water in order to cross. The third room is filled, and swimming through it triggers an alarm. A guard opens a door, although strangely this does not always happen. Sometimes the door remains closed until Lara gets out of the water. The button behind the guard unlocks the final switch. On the way back out, we notice that the pool is now empty and a hatch has opened at the bottom, but there is no way to climb down. Players do not immediately notice the monkey bars, but since there is nothing else to do, the progression remains fairly linear. The developers also made sure that doors close behind us as we progress, preventing players from wasting time going back. Activating the button fills the large room with water, allowing us to pass through the hatch. Lara arrives in a flooded room where it is easy to overlook the hidden items. We are actually underneath the room containing the first secret, which finally explains the mysterious, inaccessible chamber above the vaults. Swimming towards the only available opening, we take out a guard, and ominous music starts playing near this ladder. Players assume there is no danger because ladders are not dangerous in this game, and then they die. The next section forces us to walk through barbed wire towards the next secret. Getting down without dying is absurdly difficult because Lara is apparently as vulnerable to sharp objects as a balloon. That doesn't stop her from crawling through them without a problem immediately afterwards because, Tomb Raider logic? Once we reach the cathedral, very few players take the time to explore around it for a secret. In fact, it was visible from the previous secret, the one where Lara was climbing in that bizarre way. The central block acts as a platform for reaching the final secret, the Cathedral key. This key unlocks the bonus level, which itself becomes available once every secret in the game has been collected, something very few people managed to achieve in the original version. On top of that, the end of the level is poorly signposted, so it is quite likely that players will trigger it before they have had a chance to explore everything. In the cutscene, Lara is shot before performing a very stylish forward roll, a move that exists in the remaster but was completely new at the time. This sequence probably influenced its inclusion in Tomb Raider 4. We can also see that Lara manages to disarm a man without killing him, despite having only 2 shots and very little time to aim. She also uses her surroundings to her advantage and manages to overpower him while remaining calm and polite, an essential part of her classic character. We learn that Sophia Lee ordered the attack, and Lara asks how old she is. This only makes sense if Lara suspects that the artifacts have some effect on longevity, something she could only reasonably speculate about at this point. The guy then suffers the consequences of natural selection, and Lara dives into the hole, because apparently she becomes immortal whenever the player isn't in control. The story continues in the next episode. It can't get any harder, right? Thanks to the donors, and thanks for watching.